If you arrived at this video today, it was not by chance, and it was not the algorithm that did it. In the last 3 days, something inside you has begun to stir in a way you haven't been able to quite name. Perhaps it was that silent restlessness that appears out of nowhere in the middle of some mundane task for no apparent reason. Perhaps it was a thought that insisted on returning, time and again, as if asking to be resolved before you could move on. Perhaps it was that strange sensation that an invisible threshold is approaching, and that after it nothing will be exactly the same. If you recognized any of these feelings, pay attention now, because what I am going to show you in the next few minutes will explain exactly what is happening to you and what to do with it before the window closes. On July 14th, the new moon in Cancer occurs, and there are 7 specific signs that the universe is already using to prepare you for this turning point. Most people will feel these signs and will simply attribute everything to stress, accumulated fatigue, or a bad day. And for those people, the window will close without them even realizing it existed. But you are not among them, because you have already felt that something is happening, and that means you belong to the small group of people who still have the internal structure necessary to use this passage consciously. Stay until the end, because the 7th sign completely changes the way you will enter this new cycle. The first thing you need to understand is that the new moon never begins at the exact moment it is announced on the astrological calendar. That is a surface illusion, a technical detail that serves to guide rituals, but which does not represent the real start of the process. The real process, the true movement, begins days earlier, silently, within the body, the mind, and the emotions of those who are about to cross this portal. Think of it this way. When the tide is about to change direction, the water does not wait for the exact instant of the turn to start moving. It is already receding, already preparing, already altering its pressure against the sand, hours before any observer can perceive the change with the naked eye. The same is happening with you now. Your nervous system, your mind, and your emotional field have already begun to reorganize for what is to come, and that is exactly why you are feeling things you could not feel a week ago. The days leading up to the new moon in Cancer are not a void, not dead waiting time. They are a decisive window, a space of preparation where everything that is still unresolved in your life rises to the surface to be seen, faced, and finally, resolved. Cancer is the sign that rules emotional roots, the home, the family, what you carry from childhood, what makes you feel secure or insecure in the world. A new moon in this sign does not just ask for loose wishes written on a piece of paper. It demands that you clear the emotional ground before planting anything new there. If you try to plant a new intention on top of soil full of old grudges, unresolved patterns, emotions pushed under the rug, that intention will not germinate properly. It will sprout crooked, weak, contaminated by the very root you did not want to look at. That is why these days leading up to July 14th are so important. They are your last chance to do this cleansing before the cycle officially begins. The true mistake that most people make is believing that change must appear in the outside world first to be considered real. They wait for an external sign, a striking event, concrete proof, to then believe that something is changing within them. But the order works exactly the opposite. Transformation always starts inside, in the invisible structure of thoughts and emotions, long before anything to manifest physically. Think of a river that changes its course after a flood. The visible change, the new bank, the new path of the water, is just the end result of a pressure that had been building up beneath the surface for a long time. No one sees the pressure forming. People only notice when the river has already broken through the old path. With you, it is the same. This new moon is exposing repetitive thoughts that you might not even have noticed were looping inside your head. Emotions you kept so well hidden that even you forgot they were still there. And old narratives, stories you tell yourself about who you are, about what you deserve, about what is possible or impossible in your life. Narratives that continue to drive your decisions every day without you realizing you are being guided by them. The crucial point here is this. Everything that is not acknowledged before this event does not disappear. It does not magically vanish just because a new moon has risen in the sky. On the contrary, it becomes the base energy for the entire next cycle. If you enter this new moon carrying an unresolved grudge, That grudge is not left behind. It boards with you and continues to color your relationships, your choices, and your perception of yourself for the coming weeks. This is exactly why so many people feel like they are living the same cycle year after year, portal after portal, without ever actually managing the turnaround they desire so much. They perform the ritual, write down the intention, light the candle, but forget the most important part, which is to consciously acknowledge what needs to be left behind before trying to build what lies ahead. It was precisely with this blind spot in mind, this pattern that repeats silently cycle after cycle, that I prepared Magia M28 Exercícios as 28 Chaves do Despertar for you. This is not just another loose course of generic spirituality. It is a structured 28-day path, corresponding exactly to a full lunar cycle, designed so that you no longer arrive at any energetic portal carrying the same invisible weight as always. Each of the 28 keys was created to help you recognize the real signals of your soul, integrate what you have tried to hide from yourself for so long, and live your inner truth in a practical way, without empty mysticism, without fluffy promises that never leave the page. If you feel lost, if you feel different from the people around you, if you feel overwhelmed by emotions you cannot always name, this path was made exactly for you. The promise here is direct: to transform your restlessness into clear language, transform your shadow into usable clarity, transform the signs you receive into real decisions, and transform your consciousness into practical direction for the next steps of your life. Comment right now the word Despertar if you feel that this new moon is calling precisely for this type of inner cleansing, and go to the first pinned comment to learn all the details of Magia M28 Exercícios before this specific window closes. Returning to what is happening inside you right now, there are concrete signs that your body and mind are already emitting, and the first three usually appear in this order. The first sign is a feeling of mental heaviness with no clear explanation. It is not exactly sadness, it is not anxiety in the clinical sense of the word. It is more like you are carrying an invisible backpack whose contents you cannot identify. You wake up tired, even after having slept well. You feel a light fog covering your thoughts, hindering the clarity you normally have for making simple decisions. This happens because your mind is processing, behind the scenes, a huge amount of emotional material that had been archived, and this processing consumes energy, even if you do not consciously realize that is being processed. The second sign is the constant return of thoughts or people from the past. Someone you haven't seen in months suddenly appears in your mind, or worse, appears physically, sends a message, crosses your path on some street corner in the city. Old situations return to memory with a clarity that didn't make sense until then. This is not a random coincidence. It is the universe bringing back material that still needs to be closed, revisited, and finally concluded, so that you do not carry this open file into the new cycle. The third sign is the noticeable increase in vivid dreams, repeated symbols, and meaningful coincidences. You start to see the same number several times a day. You dream of things that seem to carry more symbolic weight than an ordinary dream. You think of something, and minutes later, you stumble upon that same subject in a conversation, in a video, on a sign in the street. These three signs together do not exist to scare you. They are not bad omens or warnings of catastrophe. They are the specific method the universe uses to show you, with increasing clarity, exactly what needs to be released before you move on to the next stage of your journey. If the first three signs speak to the mind, the next two signs speak directly to the body, and it is precisely these two that are the most important of all before the turning point. The fourth sign is the realization that certain situations in your life simply can no longer be justified. That relationship you had been explaining to yourself with increasingly elaborate excuses, that job that drains your energy, but which you defend by saying it's just for now. That pattern of behavior you repeat and then rationalize, suddenly the excuses stop working. They still come out of your mouth, but you no longer believe them while you speak. This is a clear sign that one part of you has already made the decision, even if the other part is still resisting admitting it out loud. The fifth sign, and perhaps the most physical and undeniable of all, is when the body itself begins to manifest tension, fatigue beyond the normal standard, or an urgent need for silence, even when there is no apparent logical reason for it. You feel the urge to turn off your phone, to be alone, to avoid unnecessary conversations. Your shoulders get tense for no reason. Your jaw clenches at night. This phenomenon happens because the body, unlike the mind, cannot lie to itself. The mind is an expert at creating stories, rationalizations, and elaborate excuses to keep everything exactly as it is, even when it no longer makes sense. The body does not have this luxury. It simply registers the truth in the form of muscle tension, in the form of exhaustion, in the form of this almost physical desire for silence, long before the mind is willing to verbally admit what it already knows. These two signs together, the impossibility of continuing to justify and the physical manifestation of fatigue or the need for silence, point in exactly the same direction. They show, with almost surgical precision, what needs to be left out of your next cycle. It is not about guessing what to do. It is about finally listening to what has already been said for weeks, only in a language you insisted on ignoring. And it is precisely because this type of sign requires practical action, and not just passive reflection, that Magia M28 Exercicios was built the way it was. Comment the word pronta or pronto in the first pinned comment if you have already identified which of these two situations is weighing more on your field right now, because naming it is the first real step to freeing yourself from it before the 14th. After the mind has already recognized what needs to be let go, and the body has already physically shown where the accumulated tension was, the last signs emerge, and they have a completely different quality from the previous ones. While the first ones speak of release of what needs to leave, the last two speak of arrival, of what is already being born within you, even if it has not yet become visible to the outside world. The sixth sign is that feeling of silent anticipation, the certainty that something important is about to begin, even without concrete details as to what exactly it will be. It is like that moment before a summer storm, when the air changes density. The light looks different, the birds fall quiet, and the entire environment seems to be holding its breath, waiting for the first thunder. You feel this kind of expectation inside your chest, without being able to rationally explain why. The seventh and final sign is the realization that many of your old reactions, your old desires, and even your old fears no longer carry the same weight as before. That which used to easily throw you off balance now goes almost unnoticed. That desire which once seemed urgent and essential now feels distant, almost as if it belonged to someone else. This happens because the internal transformation, the deep work of reorganization, has already taken place behind the scenes. Only one thing is missing: the conscious recognition of this change. This is exactly where most people get stuck. They change on the inside, but they keep acting, deciding, and reacting like the old version of themselves, simply because they never stop to officially acknowledge to themselves that they are no longer who they were a month ago. Consciously recognizing this transformation is not a minor detail. It is what turns a silent change into an active decision, capable of truly shaping the next cycle of your life. Now that you have identified the 7 signs within yourself, the moment arrives to act with intention, and this requires concrete practices, not just good intentions floating in the air. The first practice is to identify in writing, with absolute clarity, what needs to end before July 14th. It is not enough to generalize by saying, "I want to leave negativity behind." That is too vague to have real power. Write specifically, which conversation do you need to have that you are avoiding? Which habit do you know is sabotaging you? Which relationship is draining more than it is offering? The more specific you are, the more power this identification carries. The second practice is to write down the identity you wish to strengthen in the next cycle. This is different from simply writing down a goal or a material objective. It is not, "I want to earn more money" or "I want a better relationship." It is, "I want to become someone who trusts their own intuition without needing constant external validation," or "I want to become someone who sets boundaries without guilt." An intention cast during a new moon only gains real strength when it is supported by a new identity, because desires alone, without a version of you capable of sustaining them, tend to wither after a few weeks, exactly as has happened in so many other previous cycles. The third practice is to dedicate some real time to silence, without a phone, without distraction, just to organize the mind before the event. It can be 10 minutes, it can be an hour. The time matters less than the quality of presence. This silence acts as a filter. It separates the accumulated mental noise from the clarity you truly need to enter the 14th prepared. And it is exactly at this point, at the moment when intention needs structure, so it doesn't dissolve after a few days, that Magia M28 Exercicios becomes indispensable. Comment the word Chaves in the first pinned comment now, because the weeks following this new moon will require more than goodwill. They will require a guided path, and that is exactly the structure you have at your disposal before this specific window closes for good. We arrive then at the central point of everything that has been said so far. The new moon of July 14th in Cancer does not exist just to plant loose desires and superficial. It exists to reveal with an honesty that is often unsettling the exact inner state with which each person arrives at this specific energetic portal. Two people can perform the exact same ritual, light the same candle, write similar words on similar paper, and yet reap completely different results in the following weeks. Because what really matters is not the external form of the ritual, but the internal energy with which it was performed. If you arrive carrying unresolved hurts, accumulated tension, and old narratives that are still active, the cycle that is born carries that very same quality. If you arrive having done the work of recognition, conscious release, and the strengthening of a new identity, the cycle that is born carries a completely different potency. The decision you make now, in these final days before the event, is the decision that effectively changes the entire next cycle. It is not about passively waiting for the moon to do some magic for you while you remain exactly the same. It is about assuming, in a conscious and deliberate way, the transformation that is already happening within you, trusting in the signs you have received throughout these days, and starting this new cycle from a renewed version of yourself, rather than from the same tired version that had been silently carrying all of this until now. Before you leave this video, there are two things I need to ask of you. The first, if you felt at any moment during this transmission that this energetic window has already begun to open within you, comment the word portal down below right now. This comment is not just a formality. It acts as an energetic declaration, a record that you consciously recognize the moment you are living in, and it is exactly this type of recognition that separates those who cross the portal consciously from those who just cross it by chance, without taking advantage of anything it offers. The second thing, if you are not yet subscribed to this channel, understand that every video here is not an isolated and disconnected piece. Each video is a specific coordinate within a much larger map that tracks the movement of the entire year, the portals yet to come, and the energetic windows that will open in the coming months. If you are not subscribed, you will continue receiving only loose fragments of this map without ever seeing the full picture. And missing the sequence of videos means, in practice, missing the context necessary to understand exactly where you are within this greater journey. Subscribe now and turn on notifications, because the next pieces of content will show exactly what happens after this specific window, and you won't want to arrive late for that part. What you have heard so far was only the necessary preparation for what comes next. The final revelation about what this new moon in Cancer truly means for your new life, for the relationships that are about to change in quality, and for the decisions you will still need to make in the coming weeks, is in the video appearing on your screen right now. Click on it. The first 60 seconds of that next piece of content will completely change the way you see your own timeline from today onwards.